And we're back on a snowy Sunday in January, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your cold and snowy and pretty fucking miserable Sunday morning here with me in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, today is a movie anniversary, maybe not necessarily the kind of film that I would spotlight, but a movie that I saw on its opening night, have always been a significant fan of, and a movie that has been discussed an awful lot in the last, 8 to 10 months, because it has more than a passing resemblance to a film that is a surefire Oscar contender at this upcoming year's Oscars. So on January 18th, 1996, the first collaboration between Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, From Dusk Till Dawn, opened in theaters. Now, I saw this film the night that it opened, and I didn't take it as anything other than a super entertaining, old school exploitation film. This is a movie that is not, at least in theory, is not trying to make any larger commentary on society. It starts off like one movie, and then it becomes a completely different movie in its second half. And the tone shifts were not what people expected in the mid-1990s. Now, if you watched the trailer, you knew the tone shifts were coming. This was a film that had a red band trailer. The trailer was like R-rated. The film starts like a crime thriller in the manner of Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, which he wrote and directed, and possibly even Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, which he had already written and directed, both of those films by that point. In this movie, Quentin wrote the screenplay, and it was a script that he had written many years earlier. It had kind of sat on his shelf, and then Robert Rodriguez said, "Hey, Quentin, can I take a look at that vampire script?" Because they were already friends. Rodriguez was making Desperado, I believe, at the time with Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek. So when Rodriguez read the script, he said, I think we can do something with this. Let's see if we can get this going. And they, in fact, did get this going. So From Dusk Till Dawn had a budget marketing scenario was $19 to $20 million, and it grossed around $60 million worldwide. More than half of which came from the overseas market. And I apologize because I always say this, it feels like it could have been a film starring Sylvester Stallone, because without having looked, I would have assumed that this movie simply played better in the United States, because it is a very American kind of a movie. Although you could say, well, the fact that the villain is also the hero in this, that's a little bit French, European, if you will. So, no Stallone jokes here, although I just made one. But From Dusk Till Dawn ended up grossing just under $60 million. So it made more than 3 times its production and marketing cost, a significant box office hit. So it became a cult hit, a movie that a lot of people, have a soft spot for. It's a great vampire movie, spoiler alert. It starts like Pulp Fiction, and then it turns into, not so much The Lost Boys, but it turns into a really dirty, grimy vampire western almost. And John Carpenter, a couple of years later, with his movie just called Vampires, it has a similar ethos, although that movie is vampires everywhere all the way through. And a really good performance in the lead from James Woods. And as the head vampire in that film, none other than Terry Silver, the toxic waste dumper himself, Thomas Ian Griffith as the head vampire in John Carpenter's Vampires. But in the run-up to a movie being released last year, there was chatter on social media. People started revisiting From Dusk Till Dawn. There's a movie that's coming out that you're going to see bears more than a passing resemblance to Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's box office hit and massive cult success, From Dusk Till Dawn. And from a certain point of view, it's a film that cemented George Clooney's path to superstardom. Because if all you know of George Clooney, and I love to bring this up, if you're a young person who knows him in his older era, he doesn't act as much, He's done, obviously, the filmmaking, and he won an Oscar as a supporting actor for Syriana, and he won, did he help produce Argo with Ben Affleck? I think he did, but point is, in Clooney's older era, he's not playing leading man roles anymore. He had some laughs with Julia Roberts in that movie where they play the warring couple. A little bit of that old feeling vibe from the 90s with Bette Midler and the late Dennis Farina. But Clooney, as a younger actor, was a dynamic, galvanizing force on screen. And it's important to understand that this is not just some good-looking dude, Cary Grant sense type guy. Clooney, yeah, you want to call him a Nepo baby. His whole family was in show business, but I would say that he's as talented as anybody who worked in the business. Sorry, my cat is making a lot of noise. But George Clooney is as talented. He could have made it on his own. He would have made it on his own because he had the right look, and there's just something in his presentation, regardless of whether he's playing good guy, bad guy, or worse guy. And the character he plays in From Dusk Till Dawn arguably is a worse guy. But the story is so fucking crazy that he's still the hero. He's still the one that we root for. And large part of it is because Clooney, he straddles the line. He just manages to keep the character not unlikable enough that we turn on him. And part of it is because Quentin Tarantino, as Richie, plays the brother. He's so horrendous that by comparison, you know what? Seth Gecko's okay. He's not, but by comparison, he's not as bad. So not as bad equals good. And then you get into goofy arguments where a stone cold criminal up against a gang of undead vampires who just want to kill everybody, that's the good guy. That's the good guy. So From Dusk Till Dawn, I was a huge fan from the start. And there's a moment in the movie where, spoiler alert, where Salma Hayek's character is about to turn Seth Gecko not even into a vampire. She's going to turn him into like a toady. This was a concept that Blade got into with Wesley a couple of years later, that you have these things. They didn't use the word familiars in From Dusk Till Dawn, but Salma is going to turn him, but she's only going to turn him to a certain point where he is just basically going to be her slave. He'll be her slave for all eternity, she says. And the way that she delivers the line, "You'll be my slave for all eternity," and then George Clooney with a straight face, he doesn't seem to be playing to the audience, but it feels like maybe he's talking to men in the audience? I don't know, but "I'm going to make you my slave," and his response, "No thanks, I already had a wife," boom, 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 boom. Now, that's as inappropriate of a laugh as you're going to find in 90s cinema. Me, age 22, with zero social life. None. I'm screaming at that line. And I wasn't the only guy. And there were guys that probably got clopped over the head by their spouses when they're cracking up. "I'll make you my slave." "No thanks, I already had a wife." And I hate to say it, I became a Clooney fan for life because of this movie. So you may wonder what all of this nonsense and this kind of big wind-up has to do with, well, what present day, what are we talking about here? Well, the movie Sinners, the now fourth collaboration between Ryan Coogler, fourth or fifth, I think it's the fourth, between Ryan Coogler and star Michael B. Jordan. A lot of people talked about it. They talked about the fact that, well, there are certain parallels. There's more than certain parallels. There's a way to chart both films, genre, components, character. This is not an accident. This is a very similar run-out. Now, if you ask me the question, do I think that Sinners is better cinema? I guess, but I don't like the movie Sinners. Sinners to me is a brilliant film that I just hated. I hated this movie. But the professionalism it's top drawer stuff. The performances are great. The way that Michael B. Jordan is able to modulate and calibrate his speech in such a way, he could win Best Actor. Again, not taking anything away from him. The film just pissed me off. I did not like Sinners, but I give it a 9 out of 10 because there is no denying the craftsmanship, the professionalism, the fact that they are making larger points on society. And I realize that's a trap, look, it's a trap. It's a trap, and a lot of people get pissed off if they think that movies are preaching, but Sinners doesn't do that. It's very subtle. It's not an exploitation film. Yes, it's a vampire movie, but there is enough going on the outer edges of the frame, and there is enough going on story-wise where, without telling you, you are encouraged, you feel encouraged to start thinking about what you're seeing. And what is this movie saying? Is this movie making a comparison between vampirism and 19th century America? Let's just phrase it that way. I'll let you figure out what I'm saying. Francis Coppola, that was his take, and I was stunned when Francis Coppola, I had seen the movie and I was like, I got a problem because this film is brilliant and I can't stand it. And I guess I'm the problem here. And that's when I did an episode where I gave the movie a 9 out of 10. I said, I hate this fucking movie, but it's so brilliantly constructed, shot, edited, acted. I'd be doing a disservice if I pretended that it's anything other than brilliant. I just don't like it, you know? But the idea of, as Coppola talked about this movie in a certain context, and when you compare it to From Dusk Till Dawn, it's not just broad strokes, because in broad strokes, it's a movie that starts off as a straightforward crime drama with Western film elements set in the American West, not a coincidence. And then halfway through, it becomes a vampire movie. From Dusk Till Dawn goes from Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs level stuff, because, hey, Seth Gecko, not so much Richie Gecko. Seth Gecko, you could drop him into Pulp Fiction and he would be very much at home. You could drop Seth Gecko into Reservoir Dogs. You could sit that guy at the table as Lawrence Tierney's merry men, including Quentin Tarantino and the Harvey Keitel of Reservoir Dogs, and Tim Roth, and Eddie Bunker, and the late, great Michael Madsen. You put them all there and you put Seth Gecko there, he would have a seat at that table. And I would think that next to Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen, he's the next fucking lunatic guy of that group. He's way crazier than Mr. White, and we know he's definitely crazier than Mr. Orange, who, well, I won't even spoil it. But you understand what I'm saying. The films start as one thing and then become something else. So it starts as a crime movie, it becomes a vampire movie. Same. Well, how about the fact that you have two criminal brothers who have to face off against vampires? And maybe they'll become vampires. Same thing. Set in the American West, vampire movie. Starts off as one thing, turns into something else. Now, whereas From Dusk Till Dawn is pure exploitation the whole way through, Sinners is making larger points about prohibition, about Reconstruction, and about what it would have been like to live in certain areas if you are a person of color at certain times in history where it's going to be more difficult than maybe other times. Maybe it would be a little bit easier today. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't. But the characters of Smoke and Stack in Sinners, they don't necessarily verbalize this, but it's there in the text. And one of the best things that Sinners does that I didn't really appreciate when I first saw the movie, and I can see this was not an accident the way it was presented, is that there is an idea when, let's say, a guy and a girl who had had a relationship, had been together in a romantic context in some way, when they stop seeing each other, and let's just say that the woman is freely discussing what happened between them with her friends, and the guy doesn't want her to talk about it. The assumption is he's embarrassed, he doesn't want anybody to know because he wished that it hadn't happened. And there may be elements of truth to that, but that might not be the real reason. It may not be that he doesn't want her to talk because keep your mouth shut, you're going to ruin my life, in the way of, because he's hooking up with other girls and he doesn't want to get cock blocked or anything like that. What Sinners does that is really good is the Michael B. Jordan character who gets with has gotten with the Haley Steinfeld character. He doesn't want anyone to know because he thinks that she'll be a target. That is entirely different than the normal presentation of this sort of thing, and it is more of the doomed romance. It is more of the Romeo and Juliet. These people can't be together because reasons. And in the world of that film, they're legitimate reasons. In this era South, this is really not a good idea. You almost might need to be one of the undead to survive this bullshit. So, Sinners ended up being a significant box office hit. I thought it actually did a little bit better. I don't know, I had it in my head that the worldwide gross was closer to 500 million. So production and marketing, it's listed as 90 million. It ended up making close to 370. Again, that's a big hit, and proportionally speaking, a bigger hit than From Dusk Till Dawn, now 3 decades ago. But the film just left me so cold. It was so bleak, and it's ironic that From Dusk Till Dawn is not exactly Village of the Nice Happy People stuff. It is also a very grim and bruising movie because almost every character in that film is compromised in one way or another, possibly could be even, a vampire. And Sinners, to me, though, is the most chaotic and kind of, it's pure chaos and anarchy. And I'm trying to remember another movie that had so much of that ethos that this is all bad. There is virtually no redemptive quality to any of this. And I understand the movie tries to do that. It tries to have redemption arcs. I didn't buy it. I didn't accept it. And I also didn't think that last shootout, I thought that was a mistake. I'm not going to spoil that. Film it got so many things right that I can look at and say from a historical perspective, the way they set the time period, the very clever, again, the delineation between the characters of Smoke and Stack. Yeah, we cousins. The way Michael B. Jordan delivers that line is, he could get the Oscar nomination just for the way he delivers that line, yeah, we cousins. So there's so much to like about the film, but I don't like the film. Still going to give it a 9 out of 10. But the further in we went, the more frustrated I got. And I know people who have seen it multiple times. No, thank you. I'm good here. I don't ever want to watch that movie again. That's good enough. It's fine. I watched it once. I can appreciate the brilliance, but I can't imagine ever coming around and saying, yeah, I like this movie. Yeah. No. So, yeah, a 9 out of 10, which I hate. And there's no other movie, I've never seen another movie for which I reacted to in the manner of Sinners. I've seen From Dusk Till Dawn at least 5 times from start to finish. I could fire it up right now. As unlikable as the Gecko brothers are for stretches of the film, there was just something in Clooney's performance. And he pivoted from this, and I think that he shot One Fine Day with Michelle Pfeiffer just after completing work on From Dusk Till Dawn. Again, when you're a savant like me, you notice that the hair looks almost identical. And then he entered his movie star phase, where he was leading, he headlined The Peacemaker in '97 with Nicole Kidman. It's a movie I talked about. The joke being, there's a movie called The Peacemaker with George Clooney and Nicole Kidman. Is John Cena in it? Well, John Cena hadn't made his first appearance. He was years away from hitting the WWE. But that film showed Clooney could carry an action movie. He wasn't just, a good-looking dude. Again, the Cary Grant kind of way about him with the smile and the charm, the fact that he was a lady killer. Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez was just up ahead, a phenomenal movie. Three Kings, the Spike Jonze film about the first Gulf War. Perfect Storm. George was just crushing it. He was just putting out, he had the eye for material. He had the eye for material. It's not an insignificant thing. He had very few misses and or misfires in that era, working with the Coen brothers in '03, Intolerable Cruelty. He just kept making great films. And then, of course, that he directed the one with Sam Rockwell, where he plays Chuck Barris. That was a good movie. I'm not remembering it now, but that was a really good movie. Chuck Barris, the creator of The Gong Show. Sam Rockwell, he should have gotten an Oscar nomination for lead actor. What a great performance in that film. And Julia Roberts was in that movie also, if memory serves. If you haven't seen Sinners, it's the kind of movie I would always recommend to see, because it does rise to the level of great films, but it does also happen. It's sometimes a movie just turns you off, and it just makes you feel really lousy. And one of the things I mentioned when I discussed it in the episode right after I saw Sinners, my reaction was similar to Roger Ebert. I apologize for always referencing him, but he said so many things over the decades with regards to movies in general and movies in particular. There were so many things that I latched onto. And when he watched James Cameron's Aliens in 1986, he did not like that movie. He said, "This movie made me feel bad. This movie made me feel bad. It is unrelentingly intense, disquieting, unnerving, not in a good way, for at least the last hour, and maybe even the last 90 minutes. I'm giving the movie a high rating because of the impossible level of skill, the performances, the construction, the mind-blowing effects work. That's why I'm giving this a high rating. But I also advise you, don't eat before you see it." Now, I wouldn't say don't eat before you see Sinners, but this is a film that I recommend everybody should see, and hopefully you actually enjoy it. Hopefully at the end of the movie you say, this is not only a great movie, but I love this movie, as opposed to my kind of bizarre reaction. So I would put From Dusk Till Dawn above Sinners. I like it better. It's not a better movie. From Dusk Till Dawn is maybe, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I'll give Sinners a 9 out of 10. But it's easily digestible. It's popcorn munching entertainment. It is not a difficult film. The film does not make you feel bad. It does not put you in a negative headspace the way Sinners really put me in a negative headspace. And I guess that's all I wanted to say about the two films on the 30th anniversary of the release. It's hard to believe, 30 years ago, I was at the Broadway Mall, Hicksville, and the little bit of a personal memory, I remember listening to Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song. I don't know if this was his first Hanukkah song. I feel like it was. The Hanukkah song in the car on the way to the movies, and in the pre-internet era, the pre-social media era, the number of people who were talking about Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song. We were I'm on the line at the Broadway Mall to go see From Dusk Till Dawn, and everyone was talking about the Hanukkah song, and in particular, a piece of history that took place right around that time. It was several months earlier, the O.J. Simpson criminal trial. So when Adam Sandler famously in the song goes, "O.J. Simpson, not a Jew," the audience is screaming. People were talking about that online. That's how much of an impression it made. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song. I guess I was just happy that From Dusk Till Dawn was a hit, and that I wasn't the only one who thought the film was fantastic, that it was just super entertaining the whole way through. There were people who complained about the tonal shifts, as there were some people with Sinners, as much as they appreciated the music. Speaking of George Clooney, when Clooney did "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?", there are stretches of Sinners that play a little bit like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?", where George's character in that film, he's a good singer, and there's all of that weird mythology stuff in that movie. That's a film I really like, even though it is also a very difficult movie to get through. There's so many strange twists and turns in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?". But the music in Sinners is so amazing. The way there's a little bit of A Knight's Tale, the one with Heath Ledger, where you have songs in the movie. Are we supposed to believe they're listening to this song in 1930, or what's going on? So all that stuff is terrific. From the historical perspective, I appreciate that. And as a film guy, as a savant, I like when movies reference other movies. That is something that I look forward to. They're like almost Easter eggs, even though I don't know that Ryan Coogler would necessarily use that phrase to describe what I just said. So a happy 30th to a really terrific crime/vampire/exploitation film in Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino collaboration. Their first collaboration, of course, they did, I don't remember but Death Proof, and then I don't remember the name of the Rodriguez film, but Death Proof was part of that kind of double feature old school 70s trash sexploitation film they did in, 2006? Planet Terror, I think is what it was called. But the first collaboration between Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, From Dusk Till Dawn, opened on this day, 1996, January 18th. And the comparison, a legitimate comparison and a fun comparison between From Dusk Till Dawn and the Oscar contender, and it's going to win Oscars. I don't know how many, but it is not going to get shut out at the 2026 Academy Awards. Ryan Coogler's collaboration with Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld, Sinners. This has been episode 670 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your snowy Sunday morning here with me in New York. Peace.